Hiya guys, Talon here, and this crazy Noteblock lizard is back with a video, a tutorial video actually, and this is the Noteblocks for absolute beginners tutorial, which will cover some of the redstone that I use for my Noteblock songs, and it'll cover basics on notes that you'll need to know. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, before me, I have 5 different ways to trigger redstone. So, this is assuming that you know absolutely nothing about redstone. So, we have 2 of the buttons, a couple pressure plates, and a lever. So, I would not recommend the lever, as lever just turns it on and leaves the redstone powered. For a song, you'll probably want the buttons, which is what I like to use, or you'll want a pressure plate, which you can use pressure plates to open doors. It works it can work as well if you put the redstone underneath the pressure plate and, well, under the block the plate's on. And it can then trigger like a doorbell or something like that. So, yeah, the only difference between the pressure plates is the stone one won't allow items to actually trigger it, whereas the wooden one will. So thrown items will trigger it, entities trigger the stone one. For the buttons, stone button only it's a really short, and the wooden button lasts for a little bit longer. So that's your basic for triggering the redstone event. The next thing you need to know is the repeater, which the repeater basically takes into account how many ticks it takes to for the redstone signal to travel through it. I use repeaters to make gaps in the songs for when the notes get hit. Um, don't quote me, I am not sure if it's exactly 1 tick or not, but I count them as sort of placing it down being 1 tick, then, yeah, 2, 3, and 4, where I'm right clicking to change the setting on the repeater. For I have added note blocks behind the lanterns just to give an auditory as well as visual representation of these are what the repeaters do. Because they're all slightly offset, the redstone signal hits them all at the same time, but because they're set at 1, 2, 3, and 4, you get a ba-da-da-dum sound instead of the boom hitting all at once. So it slightly offsets it. And this is very important for the songs because you have to put spaces between the notes you're going to place down. See, for note blocks, it doesn't really matter how long the note is. The only thing you really need to worry about is when the note gets hit, when it starts to play. That is the most important part for note blocks. Because note blocks are basically like a music box. It only hits that note and then moves on to the next note, which may have some space in between it, or it may hit it fairly soon afterwards. Now, because wired note blocks are because that's what I'm doing. I'm using redstone wiring for my note blocks. Because wired note blocks rely on this repeater system, the speed of the song is set. There are some degrees where I can get tricky and play with it, but for the most part, the songs are set to that specific speed. So sometimes songs like "Try Everything" from Zootopia and "Belle" from Beauty and the Beast, as well as "You're Welcome" from Moana, I had to speed them up a little because otherwise, if I made them a little bit slower, um, it caused the song to sort of sound draggy. So I had to speed it up a little bit. So that's why some songs are a little faster, some songs are a little slower, Um, Not very many of them get slower, but some of them sound really nice slower. But yeah, this is responsible for the speed of the song of which you're playing. Now, I'm going to show you well, where the redstone actually hits. So I have a bunch of redstone lamps, which will show you which of the lamps actually get hit by the redstone circuit. So as you just saw, only 4 of them lit up. So the redstone will enter this first lamp, and it'll then light all the adjacent lamps to that particular lamp. So when I'm making a note block play, I'll often have sometimes 4 notes that'll hit at the same time. So I'll then make this little sort of, you could call it a little bit like a T almost, but I'll make this little formation. And sometimes I'll put Noteblocks beside it because I know they won't get hit, and therefore a different hit, but they won't get hit on this particular hit with the redstone. So to show you what happens on a horizontal basis of or yeah, vertical basis, because this is horizontal. Horizon, horizontal. But yeah, to show you on a vertical basis how the redstone affects it. See, it gives you this sort of a cross effect. So basically, you're hitting all of these note blocks, but you're also, or all of these lanterns, but you're hitting the one behind it as well. See, the vertical aspect is really nice because underneath it, and yes, I am using barrier blocks here. That's a creative thing only. But underneath, I can hide a command block underneath some of the note blocks, and because it'll hit it, it will trigger the command as well. So once we've figured out all of that, we then move on to how the note blocks or how the redstone can interact with various blocks, because redstone can be fed into a solid block. Um, Things that aren't solid blocks are, well, air obviously, but um, glass and leaves for sure. Those are the two off the top of my head that I know of without testing. Those two are not solid blocks. And actually, I think slabs, if you just use the upper part of a slab, it won't count as a solid block either. But I don't know. I would need to check that. But yeah, so when it goes into a solid block, it will trigger some of the areas around it. Like you saw over here, it triggers this one. But yeah. But for here, it actually doesn't trigger these on either side. It only triggers the one block and anything on top of it. Well, I think it triggers same, but for some reason it's not triggering... This setup does not trigger the redstone on either side. However, when I put a repeater there, it does trigger it on either side. I think what that is the repeater actually puts a stronger power source straight into the block. That's my speculation. I don't know the exact mechanics on it, as I just use simple redstone mechanics. But yeah, when you put the repeater in there, it makes these two on either side light up. So now we can, heading back to the previous one where you saw it only lit up the one above it, um, if we put a repeater beside it, it'll then allow the signal to travel and keep moving. So yeah, it'll just like note blocks. We can treat the lanterns the same as note blocks. So note blocks will just be making sounds. But yeah, and the same goes for every direction of this block. So into a solid block, and it lights up in all directions. So note blocks do count as solid blocks, and which is why this this method of wired redstone or wired note blocks actually works. So you can go off any direction of the note block, so you're not restricted to a straight line. It's why my note blocks curve back and forth in a design that I sort of zigzag design that I really like. So, yes, that is pretty much all you need to know for my version of doing note blocks. So, next up, we have the note blocks themselves. So, yes, there are 25 hits on the note block all overall. So, 25 notes that can be played with the note block um, on the same block. So, yeah, whenever you place a note block down, it is always placed on a low F sharp or G flat. I learned it as F sharp. So that is your starting note, and then every hit makes it go up by a semitone, just like this that I had played. And yeah, um once you place it down, you can right click to change the notes. Right clicking changes notes. If you left click in survival mode, because, well, it doesn't work so well in creative, you just break the block. But if you left click and punch it without breaking it, it just replays the note that you set it to. It won't change that note. So, yeah. My method of doing note blocks requires that you understand, at least are able to read and understand a little bit of sheet music. If you can understand a little bit of sheet music, then you can pretty much tune note blocks to play whatever sheet music you're reading. So, for me, I have dabbled with basic piano. So I tend to use piano sheet music to try and tune my note blocks to. I use it more as a guide, as there are some things that I can change if I don't quite like the way certain things sound. If I think things would sound a little better if they were changed slightly, I will most definitely do that. So the note blocks are set up from low F sharp, which then goes up to low F, so that I call it at number 11, and then we get to number 12 where I call it middle F sharp. Basically, middle F sharp is an octave above the low F sharp. They sort of sound the same, but you can tell one's low, one's high, but when you put them together, they sound pretty much almost identical. And we have a high F sharp as well, which is the highest hit you can get on the note blocks. So yeah, I have laid this out, as I mentioned piano before. I laid this out a little bit like the keys of a piano. So when you're looking at this way, ignore the ones at the bottom, you can sort of see black key, white key, black key, white key, right? Two white keys. This makes it a C, um, right? If you know your piano keys, you can sort of see it does look a little bit like a piano. And then I did the same on the higher notes as well. So yeah, that's the tuning part of the note blocks. There is one other aspect. Actually, when I am in creative, I like to have the regular note block so it's set to 0 when you place it, and I also like to hold down Control and select this block at 12 hits. That makes it easier so that if I reach some of the higher notes, okay, it doesn't work nearly so well in the cement. But yeah, I'll place. Wait, oh, right, that's more cement. Place here, and then makes it so that they're an octave higher. It makes it easier for tuning from low notes to high notes, so you don't have to go through all 24 hits. It just makes it from like I think 11 on one side and 12 on the other that you can hit. Makes my life a heck of a lot easier. So once you're finished with that, the final part with note blocks is what you place the note block on. Depending on what you place the note block on, it will change the sound of it. So we sort of have our default note, and I put 2 here. Whoops! Didn't mean to. Didn't mean to. There we go. Shift beside it. It won't trigger it. Didn't mean to break that. But yeah, these are your harp and piano sounds. Um, yeah, Minecraft wiki calls them harp slash piano. It calls them a bit of both because they are a little bit of a combination of both. But this is your default note. As you can see, when it's on air, it still makes the same note. So I like to use dirt. It is like the easiest to find block. It makes it super easy. You can put it on grass as well because grass will change into dirt. Um, if you put it on top of a command block, it still makes this sound. So there's that. Um, the next sound is your flute, and that is on top of clay. It is not hardened clay, or what is now called terracotta in 1.12. The clay, you have to find it on, you can usually find it on riverbeds, and yeah, once you put it back into the block, it then can make this sound. It makes a flute sound, which personally I think the flute sound should be slightly longer, but it still sounds decent enough when put with to the music that I've been doing it on. Blah. The next sound is bells, which it makes a sound when you place it on top of gold blocks. It's called bells. Um, this is an expensive block. You're gonna have to either find a mesa and mine that thing dry, or actually make a gold farm, which you can do using a whole whackload of nether portals to spawn in zombie pigmen and whatnot. That's how you make a gold farm to get gold nuggets, change it into gold ingots, change it into gold blocks. May take a while, but yeah. In creative, it's fine, but in survival, you're gonna need a lot of gold. And when you think you have enough, get about 3 times more. That's usually how many you need, unless the song specifically states how many note blocks you'll need. But yeah, bells, flute, and harp piano are the 3 kinds of note block sounds that I like to use for the melodies of my songs. Because they're generally strong sounds and they do tend to carry over top. Sometimes I will double it up, so have 2 of the same note played, which makes it a little louder than everything else that's going on. But besides that, these 3 are known as my melody blocks. There are exceptions, but I tend to stick with these 3. Um, the next 3 are what I call my bass blocks, and these, as I said, there are exceptions, but these 3 are generally what I use for the bass line of a song. So, starting with guitar, which is now placed on any kind of wool, does not matter of the color, it just placed on wool. And it makes that guitar sound. So, yeah, so if you have a song that gives you the chords and you know what the guitar chords are, you can strum them using guitar now, which this is a 1.12 edition. So my Noteblock songs used to be on a wool platform, and they still are to a certain extent. But a lot of my previous pre 1.12 songs uh, have the default sound, so this piano default sound on wool. So some of them won't sound nearly as good as they would have in the previous ones. So yeah, there's note blocks on guitar. The next sound is bass guitar, and that's on any kind of wooden planks. And wood logs will work too, but you're better off on planks. But that makes a bass guitar sound. And I'd been using this one a lot in previous note blocks for my bass sound. It actually makes a really nice strong bass sound, but sometimes if I want something a little lighter and not so bass heavy, I'll use guitar on it. And also, if I want something even lighter, I'll use xylophone. But yeah, xylophone is on bone blocks, which you'll want a skeleton spawner to get you a lot of bones out of that, so you can make bone blocks. Um, yeah, xylophone is one of those little special ones that could potentially work as a melody block, but I find it a little softer, a little too soft for that. And sometimes there are other notes like the bass guitar that'll overpower it a little. So I tend to use this one as more of a lighter, sort of a lighter, more upbeat melody or song bass notes. And it sort of does sound a little bit like water. At least the way I hear it, it sort of sounds like it represents water or something, which I used it a lot in my Colors of the Wind from Pocahontas. Or that song has this. Um, yeah, so the next three are my percussion sounds. So starting with bass drum. Not much change in there. It changes. The change on this is subtle. But yeah, this is placed on any stones. So regular stone, as you can see, cobblestone will work, bricks work, um, concrete work. I think prismarine, purple blocks. Let's see, in stone definitely. Netherrack, I'm pretty sure that works too, as well as netherrack bricks. Um, any of the other stones like granite, diorite, and andesite. Sandstone will do it too. So yeah, pretty much any stone. Chances are some of you probably took a note block, placed it down in a cave, and got this sound and didn't know what was going on. But yeah, that's your bass drum. I tend to just place it as it is, and sort of it makes that low, nice bass drum sound to keep the time. Next one is snare drum, and this one I tend to like to pitch a little higher. As personally, I think it sounds a little better in a song when it's higher, and it sort of represents a hi-hat sound maybe a little bit more. But, and then we can have some of the... Yeah, see, the lower sound doesn't really sound as great to me personally, but, yeah. This can be placed on sand, gravel, red sand, and any of the concrete powders. It makes this lovely sound, which you can annoy people with easily. Um, the last of the percussion trio is called Clicks and Sticks. You can sort of see why this one gets annoying easily as well. This gets placed on any of the glasses, so it doesn't matter if it's colored glass. I'm pretty sure glowstone, sea lanterns, and beacons make this same sound. But, yeah, I'll probably need to check that out. But yeah, this is Clicks and Sticks. I've only ever used it, I think, once in my Disney songs. Cruella de Vil has Clicks and Sticks in it, but I coupled it up with the xylophone. But yeah, I still used it at the beginning of that song. Yeah, now that brings me to the last of the note blocks because there are 10 of them altogether. This one is called Chimes. It is on packed ice, and you're gonna have to find a ice spikes biome to get to get packed ice, and you need to have silk touch. It's the only way to get packed ice, which is slightly annoying. Um, but yeah, it creates this lovely chime sound. And that could work really well as like a door chime, a slight little um sort of, you know how you hang those chimes, wind chimes up on the door. But yeah, it could make that sound. And why I have this over here and not up with the melody or other stuff is because when paired up with most of the other sounds, it has a tendency to sound like it gets drowned out a little bit. So I like to use it as more of an accent to support some of the other sounds. Or if there's a certain like a run, it sounds like a you know how you could get like the wind chimes, and if you run your finger like your fingernail along them, that make that dring sort of sound as you go up, but faster than I can click, obviously, because that's as I can. But but yeah, it actually makes a really nice sort of run sound. The notes go up, uh, yeah, up or down. But yeah, that's how I like to use chimes. And yeah, that should be it for this tutorial. This is the basics of what I do, and basics for how you'd be able to actually make note blocks as well. So yeah, that's this tutorial then. So yeah, I don't know about you, but I've heard enough of my voice for one day. I will see you in the next video. Look forward to the next note blocks. Hopefully coming out soon. Still working on it as of this point. And yeah, see you in the next video. Lizard out!